Good morning. Welcome back to Women at Ardent. We're so excited to be able to refresh our program, and we have Ellie Holohan, who will be leading our conversation today with Marty Bonnock on how to be an effective ally for women leaders in healthcare. If you don't know Ellie, get to know her. She's an amazing woman. I've known her for probably 4 or 5 years, and we've worked together in a prior life. She is the Director of Talent Management in my department, HR, and she's the proud mother of James, a 3-year-old boy on wheels, and then soon to be mother of Cecilia any minute now. So at any rate, please welcome Ellie. She's going to moderate our session with Marty, and I hope you enjoy the program.
Thank you very much, Carolyn. Good morning, everyone here in our Nashville office, and good morning to everyone that has joined us, or afternoon that has joined us on Teams. I wanted to share in true Ardent fashion, I wanted to kick it off with our Connect to Purpose, and I'm going to read a Connect to Purpose from East Texas. John Gadsden, 72, currently enjoys an extremely rewarding career as the president and CEO of the United Way of Smith County in East Texas. But one spring morning 8 years ago, he woke up with a pronounced shortness of breath and a lack of energy. John called and saw his primary care physician that afternoon, who discovered that John's heart rate was 180 beats a minute. He asked John, "Can you drive yourself to UT Health East Texas, or do you want me to call you an ambulance?" "I can't go to the hospital," John said. "I have a meeting in Dallas." His doctor replied, "John, you can't go to Dallas. You have atrial fibrillation and you are going to the hospital right now." After being admitted, John's heart rate began to drop. After midnight, he flatlined and was revived due to quick actions by his nurse. After a stint in the cardiac ICU and surgery to implant an ICD by an electrophysiologist, John was discharged. He spent the next year fine-tuning his heart medication with his cardiologist. A couple years later, John woke up with difficulty breathing, and he was diagnosed with congestive heart failure. The battery in his ICD had failed, so he got a new device and a battery from his device rep. A couple of months later, that device failed, and John underwent cardiac surgery to install a pacemaker. I am blessed beyond measure for the care I have received from all the doctors, nurses, techs, friends, and family who have been with me through this journey. Together, they saved my life. When you experience heart failure, it's a wake-up call that no one wants, John said. You ask yourself, is this the end? I respond to this question by realizing that it is primarily up to me to live a healthy lifestyle, but I sure am grateful for my medical team. Thank you. As Carolyn mentioned, we're going to start our session, our Q4 session. We have Marty Bonnock here, our CEO. I know everyone's familiar with him, but I wanted to make sure everybody knew in case you're unable to see him on video due to our tech issues. Marty, thank you so much for joining us.
Great to be here.
And I really appreciate the opportunity for you to allow us to sit down and talk to you about advocating for women.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it.
I think it's really important that we have this kind of exposure with you. I don't think a lot of companies can say that their CEO would sit down to have an honest, frank conversation. So what we're going to do is we're really going to have conversations around themes. We're not going to make this so Q&A. We're going to have more open conversation and dialogue. So we'll just kick it off with thinking about women leaders who have impacted your career. Could you give me an example of some?
Sure. Well, I'll start off. Thanks for having me, and this is an important topic as I've gotten more aware of it. It's something that I maybe take for granted, maybe just in the way I was raised, but have really understood the importance of it. And when we think about our organization, 78% of our workforce is female. So unfortunately, I don't see any gentlemen in the room here, and I can't tell if there's any on the screen. We've got to fix that. Because this is as important a message for them as anybody else. But it's important that we acknowledge our surroundings and the environment we're in. But I was raised, my father and mother. My father was a construction worker. My mother is a nurse by background, an LPN, and that's how I was raised. My father raised me to respect women. My mother, raised me to understand how women contribute. And I'll kick.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, caught
You're
my
really
eye.
going to town.
Future woman leader right there.
He is loving the
Development.
conversation.
Sorry, that caught. I'm like, wow, that was a kick.
It's really happening.
So I feel like a lot of this was just upbringing in terms of just respecting everybody's role and what we play, but we work together, and this is certainly an environment where we have to work together in that regard. But throughout my career, I had, I think, 11 bosses in 10 years, several of them women, in my first administrative role when I was at the Hillcrest system. And then I had, I think, 4 bosses in 5 years when I was in Louisville. And 2 of them were women. And then I don't know when I was at I don't think at CHS I had that, but I've had a number of strong women leaders that I've learned from throughout. And when Ellie and I were preparing for this, it was one of those things that I hadn't spent a ton of time thinking about just because of how I was raised and how I just believe that we all work together. That I've had to think about it, but have had some really great women leaders to look up to and learn from, as well as have the opportunity to mentor women leaders in my career.
How have you mentored women leaders?
The same as a male.
Yeah.
It's giving people opportunities. It's helping them to stretch and move outside their comfort zone, but also having accountabilities in place. And from my perspective, and Carolyn, I work with Carolyn we've changed the executive leadership team at Ardent quite a bit since I've gotten here. But I hold everybody accountable the same way and expect everybody is going to contribute and be able to perform. But it's giving people the opportunity and treating everybody in a similar fashion.
I like what you said about just giving everybody the opportunity. And I also feel like it's about making sure that women are aware that they can also help themselves too, right?
Yeah. I think that's really important. When Tarek was here, we did a panel together at Modern Healthcare, and there was a few other people there. They mentioned the word imposter syndrome, and I was going to ask you, Ellie, your thoughts on this. And it wasn't something I had really contemplated before. And I think and what I said to the audience is that I think everybody can suffer from that, but you have to rise above it. When you get promoted into a new role, particularly if it's your first time doing something, it's natural that you're going to have some angst and anxiety and fear. What do I do? How do I do this? This is new to me. I'm learning while I'm also supposed to be leading. And I'd say, I've experienced that myself. So it's not unique to women,
Yes.
although a lot of women in the audience, definitely were resonating with it. I said it happens for men too. So first, just understand that we're all in the same ship together.
Yeah.
And that it's okay to acknowledge that we have fears or anxieties or what have you, but also that you're well qualified. You have a seat, and that's what I said. You belong at the table. Don't ever feel like you don't belong somewhere. I think that's really important, that we don't forget that as we're going through that. And sure, we're going to learn, and sometimes we're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. But we pick ourselves up and we move on, and we learn from those issues. But don't ever feel like having those fears is going to hold you back from doing something. Everybody belongs at the table. Our people that were selected, you came here to work here because you have the leadership qualities and the experiences that we need. And even though it's a different role in a new setting and new people, you belong here. But how would you characterize that?
The imposter syndrome. I first want to say, I think it's really big that you said, I'm also, feel that way. I feel imposter syndrome as well, because I think people are people, right? We all have the same, we're all human, right? So we're all thinking, how did I get here? Am I worthy of getting here? And I think when you allow that track to replay in your mind, you can fall victim to that. So you have to tell yourself, and you can lean on experiences from the past, that you are worthy. And, and just hearing Marty say, I was thinking about it myself, to me as a new leader in an organization, I think it's easy to say, how did I get here? And look at all these great people that I'm working with that have been here for such a long time. But at the same time, it's not happenstance that you landed here, right? It's hard work and dedication from a man or a woman that has helped you get to where you are. I would say the imposter syndrome is real for everybody, like you said. I mean, even men in my family. My older brother is a big advocate for women in leadership, and he successful person. And whenever he talks about, advancing women's careers, he said to me, it's not about them being a woman. It's about, I know that this person is the best person for the job. And I love that, because I think that helps with that imposter syndrome situation, because if you believe that and it's true and other people believe in you, then you can do your best work.
Yeah. And you have to have confidence, to be a leader. You've got to have confidence, and it's okay to also say, sometimes I don't know the answer.
Yes.
Or, you have to show confidence even when you sometimes don't personally feel that way.
Yes.
One of the leaders that I've worked with, her name's Janice James. She was in Louisville with me, and she had a number of Janicisms, as I called them, the little one-liners that were just great. But she taught me a lot in terms of believing in myself, and that I have the capabilities, and to trust those instincts and that experience. A random tangent. Some of you know I'm runners in here, not here anyway, or people that compete in any type of event. If you've ever done that, it's natural you're gonna have butterflies right before a race or something. You've been training really hard for something, but you get to the starting line, it's like, still got butterflies, like, because you want to do good, right?
Yes.
I mean, it's not because if you're underprepared, you might have butterflies going, oh, shoot, I should have done more. But, but if you've done the work, it's still natural that you're going to have that, but that's sort of a productive anxiety that you can have. And that fuels you, and so, but you got to trust your training, trust that you're prepared, and then you'll have a good race. I think when you get overconfident, sometimes it's the opposite, is people, oh, I've got this, what have you. And then you get out of left field with something and weren't prepared, and that's when you get knocked down. And so, but Janice had a number of good sayings, and one of the favorites that I remember her saying is, now that we've admired this problem enough, what are we going to do about it? And so, because you hear all these different things, and it's like, but she just had a way of bringing a sense of calm around everybody to anxieties that were out there, and you see that, and so you learn from people and what they do, and how do you bring that yourselves? But it's just, it all plays together.
I like the Janicism. And where did you work with Janice?
In Louisville.
Okay.
Yeah.
So congratulations again. I know that you've announced at our town hall that you again have won Best Company for Women. Yes, I'm sorry. We have won. Yes. But I was thinking about you as the leader of that, right? I mean, you lead the company. So in a sense, I know it's a we, but wanted to ask you from your point of view, how did that make you feel? And what would you attribute that success to?
Yeah, no, well, I mean, one, I'm proud of the organization, and proud of our team for getting there. And the interesting thing is, particularly with Comparably, is these are not awards that we apply for. They solicit feedback from our team members, and then they select based upon the responses, how we perform. And so over the years, we've won Best Company for Women. We've had marketing teams win. We've had 3 or 4.
Best CEO for Women.
CEO for Women. Okay.
Don't forget that one.
Yeah. And, but one of the things I would attribute that is being intentional. It was pointed out to me, and it was fairly obvious if you looked at the org chart. When I came to the organization, there was one woman on the executive, and the rest were old white males. And now, if you look at the executive team, it looks much different, both in terms of diversity of race and gender. And that was intentional. And it wasn't because there was some board mandate that we had to have balance among. It was about hiring the best people for the job. Now, one of the ways that we were intentional about that, and Carolyn was a partner in this, is she was my first hire to the organization, is to have people that will make sure through the process that we are inclusive in who we're interviewing. And I can't say how the organization got to look the way it did, but it's really easy to see that if you're not interviewing women, you're not going to hire a lot of women.
That's right.
And if you're not hiring for, if you're not interviewing diverse candidates, you're not going to hire diverse candidates. And so, we've made sure through our search process that we have representation of both diversity and gender in all of our searches. And it doesn't mean we're always going to hire somebody in
Yes.
that category, but you're much more likely to do that if you are intentional on the front end about what we do. And we've hired some really great people in this organization. That really has cascaded our ability to be, honored and recognized.
I was thinking about the fact that, it's this award that you announced was best company for women. And when I applied to come over to Ardent, I was a couple of months pregnant, and a lot of people said, I left my old company. A lot of people were like, "Wow, it's surprising that you would make a move in the middle of a pregnancy." And I think a lot would really scare a lot of people, because you know how much goes into that with benefits and just planning out things. But what I can say is that I felt comfortable coming to this organization because of people I had worked with prior that trusted in the leadership of the organization, rolling up to you, that I said, I don't think this is going to be a barrier for me. I don't think this will stop me from taking a role that I know that I want to do and that I'm qualified.
Yes.
So I think that, just that idea of somebody even that wasn't connected to Ardent, but just kind of knows that, has that comfort, is pretty cool. And I think I really like the people in this organization. And I think what we have all seen from what happened with the cybersecurity attack is that everybody was just like, how can I help? What can I do? And that's the best part of working with people like this.
Well, I think, the fact that, we don't just talk about our purpose, but I think we live it.
Yes.
And that's the organization that I want to have, is one that embodies their purpose and their reason for being. It's really easy to put cutesy signs up on a wall and what have you, but if you don't live them, then people see through that ultimately. Shows. And again, the fact that multiple of our hospitals have won best places to work, our corporate offices, and we've gotten better each year, is a testimony to our people, but also really living out that dream for people. And we have tough jobs. We work in a tough industry, and there's a lot of that around town. But I think that the culture that we've created is starting to really get out there and be more known, that we stand behind what we say.
And I think when you continue to bring, a diverse, group of leaders and even just individual contributors to this company, that just continues to speak volumes about what's happening here at Ardent and why other people should come. Yeah. Thinking more about advocating for women leaders, you already talked about the fact that 78% of our organization are women. So it's, clearly there's no lack of women here.
Guys, we're outnumbered.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't have to be a math whiz to figure that one
out. Have you found yourself coaching other people on why it's important to be an advocate for women?
I'll say not directly, except when you see somebody that's trying to take advantage of that situation. I just believe in doing the right thing. But when you see, it's one of those things when you can see it, you can't unsee it, and there's no reason for it. Women are strong. You're going to give birth. I had a kidney stone and it took me to my knees. It's unfortunately, I think there are gender stereotypes in this world that are still pervasive in a business context that shouldn't be.
Yeah.
And we have to respect what everybody brings to the table and the strengths that people bring to the table, and not shy away from that. So, but you do see it, and when you do see it, you have to deal with it. We've had to deal with that here. I shared that in front of an audience with Modern Healthcare in Chicago, that we've had leaders, unfortunately, that were either being chauvinistic or sexist, or maybe not overtly, but you can see it in terms of the way they were managing, and we've had to take action on that. And that's not the organization we want to be, and that's not what our values are. And so when you see those things,
I'm sure that was a tough conversation for you to have, because they could have been unaware, right, that they were displaying these unconscious bias.
Right.
But at the same time, if you didn't say anything, you would be just as much of a party to that.
Yeah, well, I won't name the name, but the example
Sure.
I'm thinking about, what I was proud of, was another male leader in the organization who saw it and really pointed it out and dealt with it. And when it was brought to me, I was absolutely supportive.
Yes. And I think when those male leaders know that they have your support, they don't feel like they're stepping out of bounds to say, I'm going to take action and address this.
Right.
So given your position as the CEO, what advice can you share with women here at Ardent as far as advocating for themselves?
Well, first and foremost, as I said before, know that you belong. You're here for a
Mhm.
reason, and you have a seat at the table, and use your voice. God gave us all a voice. Don't be afraid to use it. This is something that, again, I think stereotypes, unfortunately, when they're taken to the extreme, can reinforce in a negative way that takes, and creates sort of a divide. But it exists in a real way. My wife, for example, is on the homeowners association board, and of all committees that she chairs, the neighborhood, landscaping and all that stuff, which is more of a stereotypical guy thing, right? And so when one of the guys on the committee, this is a recent, he was saying, well, we should take out the GFI ground circuits or whatever because it was a pain for the Christmas light people to deal with that. Like, no, we can't do that. That's a safety hazard. And she knew exactly what she was talking about. She talks to these same people, and she had to tell a guy. Now, others, this person kept persisting against her, and she held her own. But another guy came to her rescue and said, "This is a safety issue. You don't know what you're talking about."
Yes.
But sometimes men can be very confident in the way they project, and as a woman, don't step back from that, especially when you're right.
Yes.
And so that's the piece that I think is really important. Is you've got a voice, you belong at the table, use your voice, and don't shy away from that. And again, that's just an example of what we see in the world, but it happens in business too. And my wife's point to me was just, why does it take a guy coming in to put another guy in their place? It shouldn't have to be, and I think that's where as females, it's leaders that we support each other too. And in her situation, the president of the homeowners association, a woman, and she also came in, and and it's sort of like put this other guy who was wrong in his place, which needed to happen. But again, just using a parallel example, I know that those things probably do happen at times in the organization, and at times, you can embrace it, and it's always uncomfortable to be in a conflicting situation, but we have to do it. And I've got a number of sayings, Martyisms, I guess. Carolyn's heard some of these before, but one of the three rules that I have for our team when we get together is to be tough on the issue, not in a person. And again, we've got a lot of tough issues that we deal with, and I want to hear everybody's perspective, but it's not personal. I want to hear what Ellie thinks about something. And, there might be something in talent development and people are beaten up and we're not, making a progress here or there. It's not Ellie's fault that we're not making that progress, but Ellie needs to hear that feedback and vice versa. And I want to hear Ellie's perspective on what we're doing on the other side to recruit and retain good people and, from an operations perspective. And so I think if we can constructively invite that conflict into the conversation, but also sort of throw the flag if, hey, that was personal.
Yeah. That's right.
We've got to do that. But the more we can step up, the more we can support each other. We can have challenging conversations, but not personal conversations, if that makes sense. And so again, creating environments where that's allowed to thrive is important so that people can feel comfortable speaking up and even having an opposing view on something because they know it's not taken personally. But that's something where, again, from a leadership perspective, we have to make sure we're cascading those down. And giving people the opportunity to be part of those challenging.
I like what you said about how you're not going to make it personal, because I think it's easy for anybody to take something personal when they're told they're not doing something well.
It's human nature.
It
I mean, it's, as much as I say it, it still happens. And, and there's times where afterwards we have to go and, afterwards, hey, I know that felt personal. It wasn't personal. Again, we all have challenging jobs. We have tough situations that we've got to manage through, and it's human nature not to feel personal.
Yes.
We had our board meeting last week, and when the board says something, it's like, oh, we're not directing this at you. You take it personal because this is, I spent a lot of time here. I spent a lot of my thought energy here, personally and professionally. It's hard not to take it personal, but you have to understand the spirit of the conversation.
And I think without those conversations, you're not going to get better. Right. And you have to look at that feedback to say, this person is telling me this because they want me to be better.
Right.
And I think that gets lost in the message.
Yeah, no, I think that's an important part for people to realize too, is as hard as it is not to take it personally, realize that it's only through sort of that conflict that you're going to experience that personal growth.
Yes. So I feel like thinking about this conversation, I would say to everybody that's on our call is think about feedback in a different way. Don't think about it as a personal attack on yourself, but think about it as this person is taking some time to share with me something they observed to make me better,
Right.
and take that and use that positivity instead of focusing on what was wrong.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to our next theme, Marty. Advocacy and action. So we really spoke a lot about how to advocate for women leaders and what that looks like, but wanted to kind of switch it up to talk about when it comes to advocacy and action, there are a couple of there are a couple of themes that pop up just from research. So of the characteristics of women advocacy, we have intentionality, which is being intentional, not and to make a deliberate choice to reflect what's most important to us. Collaboration, involving a group of people sharing their ideas and skills to achieve a common goal. Inclusive culture barriers, identifying unconscious biases, promoting the understanding of others' perspectives, and giving employees tools to talk about exclusion when it happens. Humility, that feeling that you don't have any special importance regardless of your title, and that lack of pride as well. Sponsorship, and that I know sponsorship and mentorship, those kind of coincide and are hand in hand sometimes, but thinking more about sponsors, are they more invested and offer opportunities, visibility, and connection? Transparency, of course, being open and honest about an issue or decision. And lastly, accountability, the acceptance of responsibility for honest and ethical conduct towards other people. So of those behaviors of advocacy, do any of those resonate with you?
Most all of them, but yeah. And I think we've just lived through a real live example. We're still living through a real live example with a cyber attack. But Anika Gardenhire, 90 days on the job here with us, female leader, just led us through one of the most challenging things that this organization's ever gone through. And, it's one of those things that told the story a little bit, but, I was out of town with my family for Thanksgiving, and I was on a run, and my watch buzzed, and I see Anika's name coming up. I'm like, oh, and Anika's only been here 90 days. Maybe she's just calling to wish me happy Thanksgiving, and it's like, in my mind, that happened for a half a second. Probably not. Okay, let me stop and answer the phone. And it was Anika, and she's like, oh, we've had a little incident, and we think that, we've got it under control, but just needed you to know that we're still investigating. And okay, so I went and finished my run and came back, and we talked again. It's like, nope, this is not a drill. This is for real. And she just let it. Now, there's that aspect that's like, no, I'm the CEO. I've got to take charge. I've got to do this. No, sponsorship, like,
Yes.
You're the best, most qualified person for this organization. You've got the experience, you've got the knowledge, and it takes some humility to say, I'm not the person to lead. You've got it. Tell me how to help.
Yeah.
And so, in this example, you think through, active sponsorship, transparency, accountability. I feel accountable for the actions, and I completely trusted her to make the right decisions for the organization.
Yes.
And my job was there to support her, to sponsor her, to be humble enough to say,
Yeah.
I don't know, I'm not the expert here, and to let you do your job. And
Yes.
she did a great job. But I think that was an excellent example that we've all just led through of what it takes, and could not be more happy that she is here for the organization.
I'm sure. I know a lot of us were thinking about her and the IT group during Thanksgiving and the whole company, of course, in general. But thinking about her being such a new leader. Wow. Hats off to her, the IT team.
Absolutely. No, absolutely. She just did a wonderful job, as the whole team. But
Yes.
again, it takes leadership to go through that. And there was challenging calls that had to be made. Several people have said, we've told the media that we proactively took our systems down. And they're like, well, how is it proactive? You were already hit. Well, we were containing the damage. And that was a big decision to make, to take our systems down. And as she noted we were having a debrief this morning, there's another health system on the West Coast that got hit the same day, and they're still not up.
Yes.
Because they didn't make that same decision. That was a gutsy call. That was a big decision. And, she had the conviction in her abilities to make that, and knowing full well that it could have been the wrong decision. And, I had to support that decision.
Yeah.
And I'm behind her 1,000%.
Because you trust your leaders. Yeah. And I think that's what happens when your leaders feel that you trust them, that they can make those decisions. Because I
And
think
we're all in it together. There
Yeah.
was not going to be a gotcha,
Yes, that's
oh,
right.
you made the wrong decision.
her fault.
Right.
Yeah. And I think that when you have that, even though she's only been here for 90 days, but when you know as a leader that your decision will be supported, that you won't get hit with a gotcha at the end, that's when you feel comfortable to make those, pretty gutsy, hard decisions.
Now, a couple of things that I'll say too that go with that. Again, while nobody had the right answer, or nobody could have the right answer as the situation was unfolding, she was confident in her rationale.
Yes.
And again, knowing that it could be wrong, but was confident in that. She had a good experience. She was well trained for this race, even though she didn't sign up for it. She was prepared. All of her, experience and professional, upbringing, prepared her well for that moment, even though she never had to put that in action. But she had confidence, she had poise, and she just exhibited great leadership, presence in the moment, and that cool and calm under pressure, which all were great qualities that help have others believe in you and what you're doing and bring that support. And so again, lots of positive attributes that she exhibited through this whole. Very proud to have her here.
I think one of the greatest qualities in a leader is seeing confidence under pressure, because people are looking at you like, how bad is this? Is she freaking out? Is he freaking out? If they are, then maybe I should be. While I can't speak to exactly what everybody was feeling at that time, but even just knowing that she does express confidence in herself, that puts people at ease. And I think that's a really big point to be a leader, is to, back to that imposter syndrome. It's pushing that aside, knowing I know what to do. I have the education, and my leader trusts me. I'm going to get this.
The other thing that comes to mind is we didn't have a choice at that point. Something happened to us, and you can freak out and panic, or you can just put your head down and realize, okay, how do we, proverbial, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
Yep.
Like, this is going to take a while. This is going to be painful, and we've got to go through it. The alternative is what? We just throw our hands up and walk out, and patients suffer. People don't get paid.
Not an option.
So that's the other part. And again, none of us knew exactly in the moment what was happening. It took us, hours and first couple of days to unfold to figure that out. But you put your head down and you go, okay, we can do this. Like, what would you do? And that's why we do drills. That's why we do preparation exercises. And you don't always have complete information, but you got to make the best decisions with the information you have at the time, and just be confident in that, and realize, hopefully you work in an environment where you feel there's going to be support and people aren't playing gotcha or what have you. We're all in this together, figuring this out. But then you've just got to have the confidence and experience to.
There was a quote from the Friday meeting that said, I cannot remember who said it, but at the end of it said, and this was their finest hour. And I think you see people in their worst times, and that's how you know really what they're made of. So huge shout out to everybody that was a part of that and continuing to be a part of that, because it really shows our values here.
Absolutely. And people still doing it. There's people that haven't had a day off since this happened.
Yes.
And, we've got to get them some time off, and we're trying.
Yeah.
But, it just shows, how critical, everybody is to this puzzle of making this thing called Ardent work.
Yes, that's right. That's right. So we talked, I feel like you covered a lot of our characteristics here with your example. When I think about women leaders here at Ardent, I would say collaboration, from what I've seen, has been really big. Speaking from the HR side of the house, I feel like when there's a problem, you're kind of thinking about when we all get together, we have Thursday meetings with all the HR directors, and thinking about how to solve a problem. And it's not really one team that has to solve it, because there's everybody that comes together to add in a piece of how they're going to help.
Yeah, I think that's universal in our business, and particularly, those of us working in a more corporate setting. We're so interdependent upon getting things done that rarely do things just all live in one department or lane. IT crosses through most everything these days, but legal does, HR does. It's just everything involves people, technology, process. You've got multiple constituents. You've got to be able to collaborate and work well together.
Yes. And I think, I mean, of all of these characteristics, I would see that women at Ardent have displayed all of.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and I love your example.
Well, I wish I had a better one or a different one that we didn't all have to go through this, but it's
Yes,
a perfect
yes.
example in this environment of what we're talking about.
Well, it is a fair example for where we are.
Yes.
All right, so I wanted to, for us to really talk about some key takeaways for the folks in the room, the folks on the call, things that you can do for yourself to gain and to build leadership quality and capability. So for yourself, I'm just going to challenge you on the call in the room, Marty, if you as well, seek out. So find someone who's doing work that you find interesting and take them to lunch, set a meeting with them for a few minutes just to understand how they got to that point and what kind of stretch assignments or work that they would recommend for you. And then think about how you can weave those into your own day to day.
Yeah, and I think, that's one thing that, as I look at my career and I look at other people, as their careers have developed, that one's key. Nobody is going to be as focused on your personal development as you are.
That's right.
That sounds harsh, but it's the truth. We have people that want people to grow and develop. I'm not saying that that's universal, but you're always going to be more interested in your personal development than something else can be.
Yes.
So you've got to advocate. And so find those opportunities to get involved. This analogy will date some of the people in the room at least. There used to be these commercials for Life cereal, and there was a little kid named Mikey, and his older brothers were like, "Mom brought this cereal home. This looks kind of gross. Like, give it to Mikey. He'll try anything." I felt like that was me when I was early in my career. Is give it to Marty. He'll try anything.
Yeah.
And even if I didn't know what it was or how to do it, I never shied away from the opportunity to apply myself, and take on new responsibilities, even though I had a plate full of other things that I was doing. But if you want to grow and develop, you've got to find those opportunities. And the people say like, well, gosh, he's doing that, and the same thing. And Eric goes in the same situation, how do you get there? It's by seeking those opportunities out, not being afraid to ask for help, because a lot of times, as I look at things, we've got lots of work to do, lots of projects that need to be done. And it's like, I don't want to bother Ellie. She's got so much on her plate. Well, Ellie's going, I want a challenge.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, I've got a lot on my plate, but I want to do something different. And so it's a two-way street, but a lot of times it's not because Ellie's a woman, I'm not going to give that to her.
Yeah.
It's like, Ellie's really busy. I don't want to burden her. It's like,
Yeah.
Ellie's like, hey, I'll tell you when I'm burdened.
That's right.
And so it's a two-way street, but you got to advocate for yourself as
Yes.
well, and let people know that you're open to that, wanting to do that.
Yes, and I think also you need to be able to say, hey, I can't take this on right now, and being fair to your priorities, but also keeping yourself open to learning new things.
Right.
The next one is to talk about your accomplishments. I know this is really hard to do. Nobody likes to stand up and talk about everything that they've done. That's great. But it's a really good time to reflect on your past accomplishments, especially when you're having your performance review and talking with your manager, because it really talks about how you could build on what you've accomplished for a future leadership. So I would say it's similar to seeking out in the sense of speaking about your accomplishments. They really do go hand in hand. But just making sure that you are sharing what you've done to remind your leader of your accomplishments.
And I think that's what it is. It's that sort of, it's not the humble brag, so to speak, but if somebody's seeking to stretch themselves and move into an area that may be out of their natural lane in which they're seen, it's important to say it. But look, I've accomplished this, and this, and give somebody a chance to say, you know what, they're right. I mean, they have achieved, and I know this may be a stretch or a little bit outside of their normal area, but I trust that. But I need to know those wins.
Yeah.
I think that's really important. Particularly, again, most of us, again in a corporate office setting, we are the word SME, subject matter experts, right? Well, if you're a subject matter expert in history, that doesn't make you the subject matter expert in math. But if you want to be a well-rounded leader, you've got to be subject matter expert in a lot of different things to be able to take that next step and to grow. And so it's important, again, to show the successes you've had in your area of expertise, and ask for those opportunities in an adjacency to say, I'm going to try that. So I think those are important complements of each other.
Yes. And you have to be an advocate for yourself because no one else will do that. Take on new assignments is the next piece. Volunteer for a project or assignment that you know will stretch you, and then bring those ideas to your manager so they know kind of how to help you develop to your next point.
Right. And again, everybody has their own personal aspirations, and some people are very comfortable with what they're doing and
Yes.
don't want those same things, and other people know, I want to be challenged. I want to get to that next level. I want your job,
Yeah.
you know, and it's important that your manager, your leader understands that,
Yes.
your personal.
It is. And of course, in what I do in the development space, we want to hear that because we want to know how we can get you. We want to keep good talent here in this organization.
Right. And there's going to be times where, unfortunately there's not, Steve Petrovich, our general counsel, not everybody can be general counsel,
Yeah.
But you've got ambitious people in the department that want to achieve. And, he's like, there's only one of him,
Yeah.
but, he's developed 6 people that have gone to be general counsels in other companies. And sometimes we have to acknowledge, as much as I want to keep everybody here, because I care about people's personal
Yes.
development, professional development, sometimes you have to let that go.
Yeah.
Tarek is an example there that she came here after running one market in Chicago and took on Ardent, which was a big step for her. And now she's gone to be a COO at an organization 7 times the size of us. That was a developmental path. And
Yeah.
as much as I hated losing her, I understand the opportunity. I can't in good conscience hold her back from her potential. And that hurts, but it's also something I've always believed in my career, that you can't hold people back from fulfilling their personal dreams and aspirations, even if it's not what's best for me.
Well said. Well said. I think it is hard to watch good talent leave an organization, but at the same time, you're proud of them because you've hoped that you've given them enough tools to continue on.
Correct.
Yeah. Mentor. We talked about being a drawing a blank. We talked about being a sponsor, being a mentor, and I think those are really similar. But being a mentor is a really good way for you to build your leadership confidence. And we have a program through Women at Ardent called Elevate and Engage, which is happening right now. And you can sign up for that again in the spring of 24. But really, it's fulfilling to watch you help somebody.
And I think it works both ways. And I would challenge and encourage everybody to look at it as both sides. Everybody on this call in this room has the ability to both be a mentor and be mentored.
Yes.
And I think both are important because you learn from both experiences. I still have mentors that I work with, and I have mentees that I work with.
Yes.
And it's, I think that's healthy and appropriate. And all of us have that opportunity. You're going to learn and grow from both of those situations.
I think I'm a mentor. And I think that it helps me think about my own career as I'm offering advice. And sometimes you do get that imposter syndrome feeling when you're offering someone else advice, like, I'm not perfect in this. I'm not perfect at handling conflict, but when I do handle conflict, these are some tools that I have, and you will hear feedback from your mentee saying, I did that and it worked. And that makes you feel good, right?
It is. And I can think of some situations where I didn't even feel like I was being the mentor, but being looked up to as the mentor. And you hear that, and it's like, oh, well, you said this and this. I'm like, I did. It's just like, but realize, you have an impact. Whichever leadership role that you're in right now, you are making an impact on somebody else, and that's really important. But it's also when you're in a mentee situation, there's a lot of work on the mentee that I think people take for granted. It's like, oh, I've got this mentor, and they're going to tell me everything. Like, no, that's not their job. They don't know what's going on in your head, what your personal needs are, what your developmental needs are. And you've got to, again, self-advocate. Well, this is an area I feel like I'm doing well, but this is an area I struggle. Like, how would you deal with this conflict issue, or how would you deal with that? Because otherwise your mentor doesn't really know what, they're not shadowing you necessarily, and seeing, typically your mentor is not going to be your boss. It's going to be somebody else, and they only know what your situation is based upon what you tell them.
That's right.
And what you don't tell them is often equally important to what you need to develop, but you need to understand what your blind spots are, or at least to be able to channel to them what those potential blind spots that you've heard of from others, so that they can be effective in helping.
Yeah, the mentee does have to do a lot of work on their own because they have to provide you with that. That's so true. And the last one is be visible. So make it a point to build your network. So this is just an example, maybe at the start of a town hall or an in-person meeting, just saying, hey, I haven't met you yet. My name's Ellie. Just putting yourself out there to make sure that people know who you are. Because that's how you're going to gain, hopefully a foot in the door or a stretch assignment, something like that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then on the flip side, for others, so how can you help others build these leadership opportunities? So of course, we're going to share opportunities and thinking about an opportunity that you have, saying, how could I offer this up to somebody else? What would this look like? I have this project that's has a big visible spotlight. Who could benefit? And I think that's for men and women, right?
It is. Yeah. And I mean, you've also got people that are always going to raise their hand. And sometimes it's getting to know somebody and what they need. And sometimes they might not raise their hand for that, but that they're capable of doing it.
Yes.
And calling on them to give them that opportunity.
Yes. Publicly celebrating accomplishments. I think that's something that a lot of companies realize that needs to be done more of. I think we do a nice job here of celebrating accomplishment, and especially in our communications, to say what has been done.
And I'm very fortunate that I've got people like Carolyn, like Rebecca Kirkham,
Yeah.
that help point those things out, because I know that is not a natural skill or strength of mine. But knowing that about yourself, it's like, okay, then how do I surround myself with people that are good about helping to make sure that we are providing that, giving everybody that opportunity.
Yeah, and speaking up and saying, hey, this may not be something I'm going to do. I need you to step in and help me out. And then by celebrating those accomplishments, you'll get noticed by the right people, is really kind of how that leans into what we're talking about here. Sharing the non-promotable workload, another point. So what is non-promotable work? It's taking notes, it's setting meetings, kind of tasks that, 9 out of 10 times a woman will raise their hand and say, I'll do that. And that could be for a number of reasons. But, when you're seeing these small day-to-day things happen, if you raise your hand to say that you'll take some of that task off, I think that does kind of share the spotlight into a woman to say, I can also do it. It doesn't have to be.
Absolutely. And I'm having lots of Carolyn moments here, and she's in my direct line of sight here, but there's times when I've taken things on and Carolyn's like, no, let me take that. You don't need to be sure. Yeah. And it's like, okay, you're right. And
Yeah.
It's just like, and again, just trusting, letting go, and giving people the opportunity to show, they are more than capable of doing that, and,
Yes.
and making sure that happens. Yeah.
That's right. Sponsor a woman. So the right mentor can take a woman far, but really being a sponsor for a woman shows that you have, an interest in their career and accelerating their career. So that could look like a number of things. It could look like you advocating, not just you, Marty, but you in the room, advocating for another woman leader or somebody that is in need of an advocate. Like you said earlier about opportunities, saying, well, I think Allison could do that. And then maybe to pull her aside and say, is this something you're interested in doing? And then throw her name in.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, and for us, that's looked like, again, intentionality too. I mean, if you look at the executive team, and again, it wasn't by mandate or like that, but I mean, we went from one female on the executive team to half the executive team.
Yes.
And, the numbers will always change a little bit, but again, it's about creating situations to interview, hire, and bring out the best in them.
I saw a stat recently that said it's going to take 100 years for women and men to have the true 50-50 equal, spot in the leadership capacity. 100 years, but I think as we continue to do things like this, we're pushing it, right? We're going to hopefully push it that number down from 100, to maybe 90, 80.
Yeah, and there may be women are also smarter than men not to take some of these jobs.
Yes.
There, but Karen Lynch is the CEO of CVS, number 6 on the Fortune 500 list. Pretty impressive.
That is.
And one of the biggest ones. Quietly, or not so quietly, CVS is number 6 in the Fortune 500, which is amazing. And strong female leader there that is charting a new course for that company, from just being a retail company to being a health services company.
Yes.
And so I mean, I don't think it should take anywhere close to that to get to the balance that we
I hope
have
not.
and need, but
Yeah, I'd like my kids to see that happen. And last one is to be accessible. So everybody always talks about the open door policy, right? Making sure that somebody knows that if they need you, they can just walk in and ask a question. Of course, trying to be respectful of everyone. But in addition to that, just finding ways to build your network, hosting a lunch or a roundtable discussion, just making sure that you are allowing opportunities to be seen. And I think that this is a great example, right? What we're doing right now.
Absolutely. I mean, again, I think a lot of it goes back to intentionality. And again, we're not doing this just to say we do it. I mean, we really believe in promoting women in the organization. I mean, the fact of the matter is, the supermajority of our company is female-based, and we've got to create opportunities to make sure that we're promoting that, listening to women, and including them.
Yes, and I think that this company is doing a really good job of that. So we will wrap up, Marty, and I was going to ask you, what is the message? And we talked a lot. I don't even know what time it is, but I feel like we've had a really nice conversation. And I just wanted to say, what do you think that the key takeaway or the wrap up message should be from that? I don't think you touched on it just now.
Well, that's part of it's that, but I'll just go back to something I said earlier. Is just trust your voice, use your voice, and know that you belong. You're here for a reason, and don't let anybody let you feel otherwise. I think that's that was something that really stuck out to me. This conference that I did, it was the Women's Leaders in Healthcare conference at Chicago, and I was one of a few guys in the audience, and but just seeing how some of the comments resonated in this feeling of imposter syndrome, or I don't belong, or what have you. Like, don't ever feel that way. Don't sell yourself short. You belong. You have a voice. You belong at the table. You were hired to do a job, and don't let anybody take that away from you. Just be confident in yourself and your abilities, and realize that if you ever have those butterflies, again, harness that for good. Use that as productive anxiety, not as a reason to cower away. That is one of the things that I just was able to see the impact that some of those statements made. And when I got up on stage after seeing that, I'm like, guess what? I have those feelings too. Like, it's okay. Don't let that take you away from your potential, because everybody's got a great experience and unique thing that you bring to the table. Yes. And don't prevent the organization from having ability and access to that.
To the real you.
To the real you, absolutely. So use your voice and just know that you belong.
Love that. I think mine would be, and I saw a quote a while ago that I really liked, and it says, if there's not a space for you at the table, pull up a chair. Yeah. And I think that starts with you saying, I'm worthy, like you're saying. I know what I'm doing. I was chosen for this. That confidence starts here, and you can't get it from anybody else. You have to work on that for yourself too. I really enjoyed our conversation, Mark.
Likewise. Great to be here. Do we have any questions? Okay.
We have one question from Jean Kincaid. She said she likes your rules to be tough on the issue, not on the person. And then she mentioned that you had 2 other rules.
Yes.
And do you mind sharing them?
Yeah. First is hats and titles come off. So when we're in a room, I'm not the CEO. Everybody is on this team trying to make this a better organization. And if I put the CEO hat on, again, stereotypes, people go, well, Marty said this, so that has to be the answer. Not always, and so I know that I have strong opinions on most subjects. And I've said to people, if you don't want my opinion, don't ask for it, because I will have one and I will give it. But I can be changed. So hats and titles come off. Tough on the issue, not on each other. And then the third is, we're going to beat up the issues. We're going to have our conversations, but when we leave, we've got to have each other's back 110%. No meetings after the meeting, the passive aggressive types of situations. And again, we're not perfect at all of those, but those are sort of the basic ground rules I've kept with me throughout my career, and they've served me pretty well. And I'm not ready to give them up, and I don't know that I can remember more than 3. So that's where they're at, but they're important, again, you've got to create an inclusive environment where people know that they can disagree with the CEO, and that's okay. I worked in one organization where people didn't believe it because that's not how the previous CEO was. And so I had a role model with my COO. I'm like, Ellie, I want you to disagree with me and like really go at it with me in the
Oh, wow.
meeting. And like we had to role play because
Sure.
the rest of the team wasn't getting it, you know. And once they saw like, oh wow, he can beat it, and I backed down. Like, and again, it was a bit staged for effect, but people needed to see that at the time. Like
Yeah.
here, it's been a much more natural environment, I'd say, or with the team that we've created at least. But people can see it and test it, and it's not that I won't come back and have a strong opinion, but it doesn't always have to go my way. You know, but we're going to have big discussions, and again, it's not meant to be personal. But when we do leave, whether we made the decision or not, you know, let's go back to the cyber event. We made the call to pull the plug on our systems because we felt like that was the right thing. We didn't go back and start second guessing each other. You know, I mean, we had each other's back. Again, so those are the three.
One more question here. If you happen to have a favorite leadership book and if you would share that.
Oh gosh, there's been a lot over the years that I've gravitated to, but I've been trying to read less leadership books lately and more outside books. I'm trying to think of one that would be appropriate for the. Ellie, do you have one?
Yeah. There's a book that I really liked by Sheryl Sandberg called Lean In. And I think that that really started a lot of this conversation that we're having today. I took Lean In with another, kind of took the premises of Sheryl Sandberg's book, Lean In, to another organization. And that helped me, you know, really as a woman now in a leadership position, but thinking about how to share my gifts, talents with others, and then how to take what people have given me to heart as well.
That's great. You know, I like to read stuff outside of genre sometimes.
Yeah.
The last one that I read was Eric Larson's book on Churchill, and I'm blanking on the title at the moment, but again, it wasn't a leadership book, but you got to see how Churchill was able to lead through the conflict, you know, leading up to the Nazi invasion.
Yes.
Germany, and you know, just seeing the thought process, the decision making, have you. So again, it's a really thick book, and it's not a leadership book per se, other than there's leadership lessons to be drawn out of it. But I like that one. And Sheryl Sandberg,
Yes.
great COO.
Yes, absolutely. Any other questions? Any questions from our room, from our live audience? All right.
Well, thank you, everybody. It's great to be here here today with you, and enjoyed the conversation.
Yeah.
And just hope everybody has a great holiday season. I know it's we're in tough times, and everybody's being asked to do a lot right now, and I know that it's not easy to take time off or away, but I hope everybody does find that time to rest and replenish and recharge. So important. We've got a big year ahead of us coming up, and we're not going to let this little asterisk that we had here take us down from our big goals and ambitions that we have. So just everybody have a great holiday, and look forward to seeing you in the new year.